You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half of the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
One of the biggest convenience store chains in the country is Casey's, and they're also one of the most connected in the country in the communities that they serve. And that's important context because today we're going to introduce a new podcast looking at how do we hear about stories from the field and what is going on specifically with the pivot and the new normal that we are hearing because of the effects of the global pandemic because of COVID-19. Today, we're going to talk more about what Casey's is doing in reaction to the current pandemic, and we'll also talk a little bit about their cameo in the Netflix show Tiger King. Welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is Jeff Lenard with NACS.
And I'm Carolyn Schnare, also at NACS. And before we get started, Jeff, I want to take a quick note that things are a little bit different today, as they have been the last couple weeks. We are working remotely from our makeshift home recording studios, but we have the same high quality audio that we always have. Just forgive us if a dog barks or someone starts yelling in the background. Also, we are recording on April 21st, and that's the important to state in case there's some developments that change anything that we're discussing today.
So with that, let's welcome our guest today, Julie Jackowski. She is Senior Vice President, Corporate General Counsel, and Secretary at Casey's, which is already a mouthful. Let's also add she is NACS Chairman. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks for having me today. This is exciting to be with y'all.
So when we look at what is happening out there, Casey's has about 2,200 stores, about 16 states, I believe. We're talking about this as stories from the front line. What are you hearing from team members and from customers about where you fit in the general dynamic of today's lifestyle?
Well, it's a great question, Jeff. It's, we know that our business, and when I say our business collectively, the convenience store business is so important to our communities for fuel, food, and household products, but that's just ever apparent in this particular situation. And as you know, Casey's is in 16 states, and over 50% of our stores are in rural or smaller communities of less than 5,000 people. So, we've really been hearing how important it is, that we are an essential business in some of the towns that we're in. We are the grocery store and the restaurant and the fuel supplier, and we're it. So, I think it's become ever more apparent to our team members how important they are in helping us to serve those communities.
And so one of the things is a lot of times people like to go visit stores, be in stores as much as possible. And that's kind of difficult when you have more than 2,000 of them. But with all these technologies that people are tapping into with Zoom and Microsoft Teams and whatever other format, are you also finding that there are ways that a very large company can feel more intimate in terms of how you're connecting both with the executive team and with the teams out in the field?
Absolutely. And, this is a little story that you may not have known. I went on a trip right at the beginning when all this happened and came back and was quarantined immediately. So I didn't even have time to get things from my office. They were all set on my porch at home. And so I had to really adapt very quickly and learned that, it's amazing how people can work from home remotely more quickly than you imagine. We're at about 800 to 900 people working remotely from our store support center. And I think I've tried every different webcast available, whether it's Zoom or WebEx or on Google or FaceTime. I feel like I can be a connoisseur of which ones work best and which ones I look best when they're looking at me in my hoodie or my pajama bottoms that I try to hide.
You're not alone. I think everybody says with they're working remotely says like all the memes. Do you notice how many times you check your hair while you're on a conference call? Imagine if you did this during meetings and whatnot. So we all do that.
Absolutely. And in this day and age, you try not to touch your face so people don't think that you're awful there either. But all kidding aside, at the store level, I think what's been really important is for us to enhance our communications. So when you have 2,200 stores, communications are key. And a lot of times those communications in the past have been through written documentations or email and that sort of thing. But we really need to have not only the information getting to the stores, but we need them to understand that there is a connection, that we do care about their safety and the protocols that we're putting in place, not only for team members, but for our guests. And so we've also gone to weekly conference calls with all of our team members. We've also had video calls, just trying to really ramp up the communication so that they have every avenue, whether they want to see somebody physically and there's a video, whether they want the information written, whether they want to be on a conference call, but to put their minds at ease, and so that they also understand, how we're trying to keep them safe and what they can do to better serve their communities in a safe manner.
And usually you hear in times like this that there are certain protocols that are very important to follow. And then there are others where when you're just trying to do something really amazing, that you may do it and then basically talk a little bit about it afterwards, like, well, this was something that really worked with customers. Are there stories, maybe more following protocol, that you're hearing from out in the field where somebody's just absolutely solved a problem, and it's really a company-wide celebration about how everyday problems are being solved in stores?
I think you're so right with that, especially in the and this happens in the larger communities as well. But in those smaller communities, you spoke earlier about, how people come to the store just to hang out. We've had to do things like take out all of our seating and, the what we call the coffee club. They can't come in and just hang out anymore. So trying to find ways for our team members to connect with those community members has been really interesting as well. Whether they're taking things out to people's cars, whether they're calling in orders on the phone. Just trying to find that connection in those smaller communities. I think we've learned a lot. All of us have heard about all the regulations, whether it's federal regulations, CDC guidelines, state regulations. We really had to rely on our team members quite a bit more than usual on the regulatory side, because in the different municipalities, they'll have different municipalities that interpret state regulations or federal regulations differently. And so they really had to become those frontline folks of helping us to stay open, helping us to better serve our guests. When the sheriff comes in and interprets something differently than possibly the county health department. And so that's Julie, really a switch.
I'd imagine too that the way, if it's anything like the news I watch here in the DC region, some of that stuff changes, like from the morning news briefing to the afternoon news briefing. And just like you said, the sheriff comes in. Maybe I'm speculating, but do you ever see, like, is there stuff happening where somebody changes one thing, it hasn't quite caught up with the sheriff? It's like, I don't know who's right, but I imagine that happens a lot too.
That is so true. And what we started, and this actually, we started this at the beginning of March, put together a cross-departmental or cross-functional task force team. And at the beginning, it was really just to, do some scenario planning. The what ifs this becomes big. And obviously it came big, fairly quickly. And so that team is just dedicated to looking at the regulations, looking at the CDC guidance, looking at the numbers. They meet 3 times a day, and we have briefings at the end of every day, find out what has changed, what we need to adapt to. Some policy or protocol we might have put out yesterday has changed today, and we have to, turn on a dime to make sure that we get that accomplished so that we can continue to serve our guests.
It's got to be hard and exhausting. And when this is all over, man, the lessons learned that we're all going to go through. But beyond just the task force and keeping up, like Jeff mentioned earlier with carry out, delivery, everything else like that, I would imagine too, you've also had to pivot with your offerings. You've had to change some IT, some of the way things roll out. Maybe some things hit the ground faster than you anticipated. Do you have any stories there?
We do. It's you're so right. We rolled out our new rewards program, a new app at the beginning of the year. And like most companies, you kind of have it staged in different, staging of events of when things are going to happen. Well, we basically just took everything and ramped it up as quickly as possible. So, we were piloting DoorDash, and we were able to roll out DoorDash a couple of weeks ago to 700 or so of our locations. The rewards program, as we've done enhanced promotions through that rewards program. In fact, today we just enhanced our offerings through DoorDash. So we have expanded grocery items, which we've never had before. And that was something that we had thought about for the future, but it needed to be done now because we need that contactless delivery, and the DoorDash delivery drivers can just drop that on somebody's doorstep. So I think we're all seeing that. They've talked to some of our industry partners. Everybody's in the same situation of, okay, how do we make the digital platform work? And some folks don't have that digital platform. They've been innovative as well as, they just go old school and let people call in, and they've got the pad of paper and they write down what they want and then deliver it curbside. So I think the big key is that, that the convenience industry is so important. It's not just what Casey's is doing, but our whole industry. And, making sure that if we can serve those guests, we're going to do it. We've always been that kind of service industry. And regardless of the platform, we just need to get it done, not only for, our businesses, but for our communities.
And we've seen that food service is certainly the convenience store industry's future. Now, it has been largely disrupted in many cases with some elements of food service, with self-serve, with various beverages, and to a certain extent with individual meals when we're talking about, say, a sandwich or something like that. But there's other opportunities. Casey's is set up a little differently. There's more of a focus on pizza. And for those, not familiar with the Midwest, Chicago-style pizza, New York-style pizza, even Philly-style pizza, which is thinner crust than New York. But I don't think most people understand the dynamic of pizza in Iowa and in the Midwest, where there's taco pizza. There's also breakfast pizza. And I actually saw something on Casey's website where breakfast pizza is now shortened, Carolyn. It's spelled B-I-Z-Z-A. And there was a whole thing on Casey's website. How do you pronounce B-I-Z-Z-A? Is it Biza or Pizza? So I'll throw it out to you, Carolyn, and then we can find out from Julie what they decided it was.
Oh, well, that's a good question because I call it pizza, but I do know, I guess nobody really calls it pizza. I would say pizza.
How'd it play out, Julie?
I'd say pizza too. We really haven't had a big discussion internally as to how everybody would pronounce it, but I think a good Iowan would say pizza. Like Carolyn said, we don't call it pizza, right? Yeah.
Okay, so we just solved a big problem today for your radio ads. But no, going back to pizza, it really does lend itself to these times, and certainly we don't need what's going on now, but pizza is a family take-home meal, and it allows you to carry forward some of these other things that you're looking at. How do you continue on delivery? How do you continue on curbside? How do you add groceries with those? These are all things I think the industry had tried over the last few years, but there might be some more traction now when it could be the new normal.
Well, and I think you're right. I mean, it's one of those situations where you had all these different options. People can get your product in different ways, but they didn't necessarily grab onto that and gravitate to DoorDash or to curbside, whatever it might be. But now that it's the new normal, trying to go contactless as much as possible, not going into the stores, unless they absolutely need to. So I think you're right. I think when this is all over, we're going to see that this is the new way to do business. I think people are going to continue to do it as much as they can electronically and through delivery. And it's been successful. And I think it's also key to work with some of those partners for us, like DoorDash, and other delivery partners. We have our own delivery service, but this helps us to expand that footprint.
I agree with you because, personally, I love going out to eat, and my bank account doesn't always love going out to eat every day. But, Friday night, we used to go out to a restaurant. Which one do we want to go to now? And now we carry in a lot more, and it's kind of fun, for my family. Not to say that we won't go back as soon as I've got a plan. I know exactly where I'm going the minute that I'm allowed out of my house again. But I agree. I think people are going to change. I think people are going to expect companies to be able to be delivered or to be able to order online or to get that delivery or that carry out. And while it might have been a temporary fix, I'm sure we'll all get better at things, all of our companies, and we'll continue to improve upon the processes that they had to quickly roll out. But I tend to agree with you. And I think that'll be in not only convenience stores, but QSR going forward. Now, Julie, I do have a question. You guys are really strong in the community, and you always have been. You're a general store. You are the community store for some areas, some small towns who might not have a grocery store, or that, you are their local hangout. But in terms of community, you've also been very charitable in what you've done over the years, again, prior to this. But just looking at some of your Facebook feeds and some of the feeds you're doing, you're really getting back out there or getting out there into the community and helping those that help serve you and you serve them. So what are some stories and some examples of that have been your favorite things you guys have done?
Well, I think, there's various things. You can do it at the corporate level and you can do it at the local level. And, just hearing what some of these store managers are putting together at the local level for first responders and healthcare workers, and, something as simple as a pizza party. And it's not really a party, but, you send out 20 pizzas to the local hospital and maybe do it during the night shift because everybody remembers the day shift. And, while that may not sound huge, that's a big deal in those communities. And that's something that they really appreciate, something different, something that breaks up, the stress of their day. So anything from delivering pizzas, providing product. We try to provide as much product as we can to various food banks. In fact, recently we were blessed to be able to provide 30,000 pounds of deli meat to the Iowa Food Bank and 7,700 pounds of deli meat to the Terre Haute Catholic Charities, and Terre Haute's where our second distribution center is, and that's about 30,000 meals. And so, just trying to work with those local partners like, Feeding America or the food banks or, Red Cross, just working in tandem, do the best that we can do with our partners to fill that need.
And we've heard from food banks, and this is before we face this pandemic, that they said a lot of the things that convenience stores offer, they offer immediate consumption. You can grab it, you can eat it now. And deli meat or other things like that, it doesn't require a lot of cooking. It's not like, here's a random ingredient, now we need to find everything else. So I think it's a great opportunity for convenience stores really to shine in terms of how they give back. And basically it fits in so well with what Casey's new tagline is, here for good. And that's something we heard from Casey's Chris Jones in the marketing, who heads the marketing department, talked about how here for good really is playing a role when he just did his, he was part of the recent virtual State of the Industry presentation that's all online on convenience.org. I know that's a long setup to the question, but here for now was very thoughtfully thought out, and it fits very well in normal times, but especially in these new times.
Yeah, that was a lot of it with the here for good, like Chris would tell you, here for good to do good things in the community, or here for good, we're a stable company and we're planning to be here with our communities, to fight through things through thick and thin, just like the COVID situation that we're in right now. We're in it together and, trying to work through things as best as we can. And so that tagline really means a lot to us to do different things with that and show that we are trying to be a positive spirit and make a positive difference in our communities.
And I actually, at my end, have been interrupted by a meow. So I'm going to give a quick transition to something we teed up the show on. Tiger King. Everybody seemingly has watched this on Netflix. It's a story about big cats and little kitties. And like I said, there was a little kitty in the background right here just a second ago. But in the episode 7, the last episode, before they added an 8th, Casey's makes a guest appearance there when somebody from the show is walking through a parking lot. I guess that created probably some sort of excitement, or I don't know what, at Casey's. With I'm sure that being a PR person, my first reaction is that good?
Well, we certainly had memes that went around with Tim Stark walking into the Linville, Indiana Casey's, or I guess the photo is him walking in the parking lot. So lots of memes went around for all the Zoom meetings and, in the background. Tiger King, it's, I have to admit, I watched it. You can't help yourself. So pretty exciting stuff other than, the monkey. Did he go into the store or not? We don't know. Thank goodness they don't show that on the Tiger King.
Oh no, I haven't gotten that far yet. Don't ruin it.
Well, I would imagine social distancing. If somebody walks in with a giant cat, there's social distancing. That's not a problem. You don't need that 6 feet in the checkout. I think that'll maintain itself. But I also don't think anybody is suggesting that's a good way to get about this situation.
Absolutely. You got that right. Yeah,
well, it is one way to keep people 6 feet away. Maybe that's what you need. I've seen people with poles walking through stores, like knocking you out of the way. Just bring a tiger.
That's right. To just bring a tiger, I think that'll do it right there. You got it.
And then maybe he'll have some pizza.
I like that. That's good. Tiger definitely likes some pizza. In fact, at one point, you'll like this story. A long time ago, it was several years ago, the zoo in Des Moines had some kind of adult night, and it that sounds worse than it is. It was basically bands and booze and tigers, right? And Casey's did sponsor the tiger area that night. And they served the Tigers meals in Casey's pizza boxes. Kind of an interesting little tidbit that I forgot about until now. Full
circle.
You got it.
Maybe you should take back and think about some other things you've done, and then that'll precipitate what's coming in the future too. There's your future planning.
There you go. I like it. That's my next checklist of things to do.
Speaking of future planning, you are our chair of NACS for 2020, and this is quite the year. I can imagine the speech at the end of the year when you get to talk about all the things that have happened on your I guess tenure here. So with that, taking in some of the ideas you had in your vision of your chairmanship, and maybe they've changed or augmented a little bit. What are some of the things that you hope to help the industry, help NACS with? This is a very big question. Sorry. Going forward in the second, well, it's not even the second half. It feels like it's June. It's really only April, but in the rest of your year.
Sure. When we started the year back in October, one of the things I really talked about was making sure that our members really understand what member services are available. What are they getting for that membership fee? Because NACS offers so much. And I always say that when new people come into the industry or into Casey's, I always say the first thing you need to do is go to the NACS website and educate yourself on the industry because it's all there. But I said, really through that, we want to connect. We want to work on development and innovation and work in the advocacy areas. And I think connection has really proven to be true this year. Just based on, all the connections that we have to make through, digital platforms or through Zoom or, working off the NACS website to connect. But advocacy has been just remarkable. And that's, one of those member services that is so important, that government relations team that we have, making sure that we can continue to do business, that we're treated fairly, that we're treated on a level playing field, that, their work has really been remarkable. So I'd really encourage folks, if they don't know what that government relations group is doing, to get out on the website. Like I said, remarkable is a word I've used a couple of times, but they have truly earned their pay this year on making sure that we can do business and that we are deemed as an essential business. Because I think sometimes the outside world forgets that we do have grocery household items and that those workers going to the hospitals and the first responders have to get fuel somewhere. So keeping us open is key.
I think that fits in just with the way that we've looked at our logo with a focus on the C in NACS. And the C sometimes stands for convenience. Sometimes it stands for community. But I think you really pointed out what we've seen as a huge benefit of our industry and hopefully of NACS, and that's connections. So the C certainly stands for that. How do you connect in communities? How do you connect with people who are trying to figure out, a whole new way of doing business? And how do you connect to those elected leaders that may or may not have the right context for understanding your business. So I think coming out of this, connections are going to be huge. How did we take advantage of them as we tried to figure out these things and tell our story? And how do we use connections once things return to some sort of normalcy in restarting all of these things we do in communities that is a little bit more routine and a little less forced? So I really like your focus on connections there and how we can tell our story and make each other better.
Well, I think one key with that connections as well that takes a little one step further is just even connections between not only our retail membership but the supplier community. Those connections have been invaluable as we try to make sure that we have the products that our communities need, or we try to get masks. That's been one recently where at first they said no one should wear masks. Then you have some states that say everyone has to wear masks. Well, where do you get them? How do you get them quickly? How do you work with those suppliers to get what we need? And, so NACS is really does a great job of building those connections, not only with retail membership, but with our supplier community. And it's really boded well for us here, continue to get that supply chain moving.
I'm not going to come up with a better ending for this episode than that. So that is the perfect way to end it and tie it all back up, because what we really wanted to hear in starting this series, Julie, is hearing how everybody is just addressing all of the things that are going on and what's going on in the field, whether it's in stores, whether it's back office, whether it's with elected leaders and with our supplier partners. So that was a terrific way to end this and just kind of showcase where convenience stores fit into this whole big dialogue, whether it's some of these things that are essential every day and some of the more specious things like we talked about, like Tiger King. So don't forget to watch Casey's on that if you haven't already. But thank you once again for joining us today, Julie. It was a pleasure talking to you about what you're seeing out in the field and what we might expect as things return to some sort of normalcy.
It was absolutely my pleasure, and I look forward to actually seeing you all in person sometime soon, I hope.
I look forward to that too, and thank you so much for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.